You are now watching a clip from the Inspired by show. You can watch the full episode on our YouTube channel or listen on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to head over there, leave us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed it, and follow the show. You've had the great stuff, but now you're coming out the other side with a different dynamic.
Yeah, of course.
Now, obviously, you and your mum's relationship, as you said, has been very strong throughout your childhood, and she took you on an incredible journey of development. What have you used with that to bring up your own sons now?
Oh, good question. I think what I learned from my mum, which was brilliant, was she never forced me to get into personal development. She never kind of tried to persuade me to do it. This is the advice I often have the question, when we do Q&As and stuff, like what advice would you give to parents that want to get their kids into personal development? Or indeed, what advice would you give to anyone who wants to get their mum, dad, son, daughter, niece, nephew, best friend, whoever into personal development? And my answer is always the same: go first, be the example. And I saw this massive transformation in my mum, massive, from unhappy in her career. She wouldn't mind me saying, single, lonely, unhealthy, successful on paper, high-flying corporate career, but not happy. And over the course of probably a year or two, I saw this massive transformation in her. And then when she went, hey, I'm going to Hawaii for 2 weeks, you want to come? I'm like, first of all, it's 2 weeks out of school. Second of all, whatever has happened here, I want that. And so for me, it's always been the example: lead, go first. The phrase that we use a lot is inspire, don't require. So rather than you must do this, I want you to do this, it's like, hey, inspire, lead by example, and then let things take their natural course.
Yeah. And your sons both attend Expert Empires, which I love. Every time I see them, I'm like, when the first came, I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. But fantastic, because they also learn a lot from being around the people.
The only downside is some of the speakers swear a lot. So I've got my 10-year-old and now they're 10 and 14, but they've been coming to the events a long time. Ty, my 10-year-old, likes to count the swear words. The current record holder is Rob Moore. That won't surprise you. There you go, Rob. I've got 2 shout-outs in this episode. He's the current record holder. So they come to the Expert Empires events. Also, I've given them an opportunity, which they both took, to go through a kids' personal development course that one of our clients actually runs, which I think is amazing. His name's Tom Owens. You should definitely, if you've got kids between 9 and 13, I think is the age range, you should definitely check Tom out. Tom Owens on Instagram. He's a football coach. That's his main business, but he does a mindset academy for kids.
Wow.
And Zach's been through it twice, I think. And Ty just did it. So I'm always, whenever anything like that shows up, I give them the option. And what's interesting is they've always said yes. But I think the reason they've always said yes is because they've been drip-fed bits here and there. They've been to Expert Empires, twice a year for the last... Ty hasn't always come because he's only 10 now. I think he was probably 7 when he first came to Expert Empires. But, they've been to a lot of those events. They think it's super cool to meet Stephen Bartlett and Joe Wicks and, the kind of Instagram celebrities. So that's quite cool for them. Their mates at school are like, you met Stephen Bartlett, oh, that's amazing. And they've got the photos on socials and all that kind of jazz. So that's cool. But obviously they pick things up, don't they? Kids are like sponges. And, a lot of the things that we've implemented in our business that have helped us have a relative level of success, I've also tried to implement at home as well. So we've got a set of family values, and in fact just a couple of days ago we did our kind of family values and goals review. So at the start of every year we do a goal setting process. I've been using the same process for 20 years probably. Wow. And so we now do that every year as a family. Normally it's my mum and Tone, me and Nat and the kids. Obviously the kids only started participating as they got a little bit older. We review our previous year, we set our goals for the next year, we capture them, and then we review our progress month on month. So we just had a little family meeting. It's not as formal as it sounds. We just did it over dinner the other night, and we kind of went through our goals and gave a little update and how we're doing, and there were some where we're falling short and what do we need to do to catch up on them. And then also, the family values, we did a little exercise to see who could remember them. off by heart. We did pretty good, not 100%, but pretty good. And then, talked about what we're doing well around these values, what do we think we could do better. So stuff like that, I think, it just kind of, it brings, I guess you'd call it personal development, self-improvement, whatever, into everyday life, rather than, I think the problem with personal development, quite frankly, is certainly, less so now, but many years ago, you'd go to a seminar. That was pretty much the only way you could absorb personal development, or you'd listen to a tape set. You're probably too young for tape sets. But, and you'd get this hit, and then you're going back into everyday life, and it kind of wear off. And then you'd have to go again to get a hit. Whereas now, you've got so much material, podcasts, audio books that you can consume daily. It's much more accessible now than it was. But I do think that consistency is key, rather than just going and getting your fix once a year at a seminar or something like that. I think consistency is key.
Yeah, and that's one of my pet peeves about the personal development space, is because that's how a lot of people have made money. It's like you have to get your next fix, you have to keep coming back, and actually it's about having other avenues so you're not codependent, right? Because I think there's a lot of codependency in the space. And one of the questions I've got for you, Nick, is obviously you, your mum, Tony, all into this industry. Then you've got the family meetings, you've got your kids brought into it. How did Nat feel coming into this? Like, was there any point at where she's going, these people are all crazy?
So, by the way, you promised me that I was gonna share stuff in this episode that I'd never shared before. You've already succeeded. There's already been a load of stuff. You know what? When you said that to me yesterday, I was like, yeah, everyone says that, but I'm not sure. But you have got a very good a talent for doing that. So, interesting story with Nat. We met at uni. So we were both at Nottingham-Trent University. I'm a year older than her, so I was in my second year, she was in her first year at uni. We met drunk on the dance floor of a nightclub, like where all great love stories start, of course. She came on to me. I know you're wondering that question. And very early on in our relationship, I think we were a month in, and I went to Australia for 10 days, 2 weeks for a Tony Robbins seminar. So, Date with Destiny, and I was actually working at that event as a volunteer. So straight away, she's like, well, what are you doing in Australia, right? So I told her, and she was kind of interested. And then there was an Unleash the Power Within event happening, let's say 3 or 4 months later in London. And obviously, I was going to work at that as well. And I was like, you want to come? I can get you a ticket. And she was like, oh, I'd love to. Oh, I'm really interested in it. And, and I think from her point of view, she was like, I know this is a big part of your life. So, and it was one of those where our relationship got, even though, we were very young and at uni, it got quite serious quite quick. So, we, I think, probably knew very early that, like, we were going to be together long term. And I think Nat was like, well, this is a big part of your life. So, I want to be part of it and see what it's all about. Maybe she was thinking, I want to check it's not a weird cult, because if it is, I'm going to run. But either way, she came to the Tony Robbins UPW event, and she then kind of volunteered at some of those events with me in the years that followed. So and I'd say Nat's probably not as heavy into personal development as I am. But at the same time, she still, has adopted a lot of the philosophies and the kind of approaches that you hear from people like Tony Robbins, or when you learn. She did a NLP practitioner certification years and years ago, and when I was working for Andy Harrington, we were together then, and so she would come and attend those events and help out with those events, and even in the holidays come and work in Andy's office. So she's been around it like constantly for the last, best part of 20 years.
I think it's so important though with relationships, because I've seen, and I'm sure loads of people have experienced this, where one person is developing and the other person isn't, and that can cause a shift and a big hole, right?
Yeah. Well, it's really what it is it's a fundamental misalignment of values, and so all it really does is it magnifies that misalignment of values. The problem happens where you go, the person I met and got into a relationship with is no longer the same person. I'm not sure I like this version. And so then, the relationship inevitably does end, and I've seen that many, many times. And do I think that relationships ending, is a bad thing. Not always. My mum and dad, they separated when I was 3, 4. That is a good thing. Like, they would not be the people they are. I would not be the person I am if they'd stayed together. But now I go, how did that even happen? Like, they are not matched. They are not compatible at all. But it did, and but I think them separating was a good thing. Like, certainly not a bad thing. So I don't think people are meant to be together forever. I think sometimes relationships run their course, like business partnerships run their course, client relationships run their course. Like, it's not always a disaster when people separate. Sometimes it's for the best.